Trudeau's follies, that is the topic of tonight's byline. If you want to debate an issue, you have to decide what that issue is and then define the terms of debate. Let's say you're debating about potatoes. It doesn't do you any good to have a debate about whether mashed potatoes are better than scalloped potatoes if you can't agree on what scalloped potatoes are. This is kind of what's been happening with Justin Trudeau and the Liberal leader's push to help fix the middle class. Trudeau has been preaching that the middle class is in crisis and that the middle class is being squeezed, and he will be their savior. Most of the media coverage of this issue doesn't bother to look at facts or question whether the statements are true. Today's political reporters, they're too busy, maybe too lazy to bother with that sort of thing. So when Trudeau preaches it, they just give a big amen. But Trudeau himself has been having trouble defining what the middle class means. What is it? Well, first, he said this.
Like a number.
What income range?
There are all sorts of different ways of calculating which decile or quintile constitutes the middle class. The reality is that I consider that the middle class is people who work for their income, not people who live off their assets and their savings.
Really? So, as has been pointed out, a bank executive, let's say Gordon Nixon from Royal Bank, well, he would be middle class to Justin Trudeau. Why? Well, he works for a paycheck. That paycheck just happens to be about $13 million per year. So in Trudeau's world, Nixon's middle class. Now, my parents, who are retired, living off pensions and RRSPs, they're not middle class because they're living off their assets. Big difference there. It's an interesting world that Trudeau lives in. And do you really think this guy who lived at 24 Sussex Drive as a child, complete with servants, and then moved to one of the fanciest neighborhoods in Montreal, and then went on to become a teacher at a private school. Do you think he's met middle-class people? Maybe that's why he's having trouble defining what middle class is. He doesn't know them. Because, well, when the error of Trudeau's thought process was pointed out to him, Trudeau, I'd like to say he came up with a better answer, but he didn't.
I have been very clear that people who live off their incomes are of the middle class, and those who live off their assets, their portfolios, their trust funds are not.
Trust funds, I bet he and his friends know all about those. Now, the pressure was getting to Trudeau to come up with an answer that wasn't so easily mockable. So, Wednesday, he said this.
What the definition of the middle class, and we'll let economists argue about which quintile or decile it starts or ends at. For me, it's people who live paycheck to paycheck.
Paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. Hey, that doesn't quite work either, as was shown in question period on Wednesday.
CIBC estimates that today, 35-year-olds put aside less than half the retirement savings that their parents did. The average consumer has a record $28,000 in non-mortgage debt, in credit cards, unsecured credit lines, and student debt. Does the Prime Minister agree with his employment minister that the economic concerns of the middle class are, quote, a myth?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, like all Canadians, I'm scratching my head about what the leader of the Liberal Party means by middle class. Yesterday, apparently a bank executive could be a member of the middle class, but today the middle class is someone who lives paycheck to paycheck. So that would exclude, Mr. Speaker, people of modest incomes who have saved something, like pensioners who are not living from paycheck to paycheck. And of course, Mr. Speaker, it would include people who have a very affluent lifestyle and spend all their money, even though they get a very large paycheck. So, Mr. Speaker, I have no idea what the leader of the Liberal Party is talking about, and I suspect he doesn't either.
Now, Prime Minister Harper's absolutely right. In Trudeau's new definition, Gordon Nixon from Royal Bank, well, he still gets to be middle class if he just spends all his money foolishly. While a clerk earning $40,000 a year working for Nixon's bank, well, if she's responsible with her money and saves for a rainy day, she's not middle class. Trudeau's silly answers would be laughable if there were not so many Canadians lining up to make him their next Prime Minister. Polling numbers consistently put Trudeau ahead, although a recent Angus Reid poll pointed out that Trudeau's lead is mainly built on people that are less likely to vote. Among eligible voters, the Liberals have a 6-point lead on the NDP and 7-point lead on the Conservatives. But when voting patterns are accounted for and you get the likely voters, well, the lead slips to 1 point above the Conservatives. To me, that says Trudeau's popularity is built on non-committed, likely low-information voters who will believe him when he says that the middle class needs government help or it will sink. they will believe his claim that the middle class is doing poorly financially. But as we've shown time and again, these arguments are not based on facts. Here's an argument Trudeau's made several times. He says in the last 30 years, Canada's economy has doubled in size, yet the median household income or average middle class family income has only risen by a meager 13%. Huh? Okay, first off, I don't know where he gets his stats, but look at his thinking. He thinks because the economy doubled, we should all make double the income. That's not how things work. We have a lot more people in Canada than we did 30 years ago, millions more. We have more trade. We've expanded trade opportunities compared to 30 years ago, and we all have a lot more wealth. Check out this report from Employment and Social Development Canada. It details family income from 1976 to 2011. In 1976, the average after-tax family income for the bottom 20% was $12,000. This is all in 2011 figures, by the way. Well, the middle 60 was at $30,567, and the top 20% had an average family income of $62,400. Well, in 2011, that bottom 20%, they were up to $16,000. That's a 33% increase. The middle, $39,833, or just over a 30% increase. While the average median family income of $87,000 for the people at the top, they had a 39% increase. Basically, everyone in Canada is getting richer. That's in real dollar terms, 2011 dollars. Everyone's getting richer with their income. Then there's net worth. Stats Canada reported on this back in February. The median net worth of Canadian family units was $243,800 in 2012. Up 44.5% from 2005 and almost 80% from the 1999 median of $137,000 adjusted for inflation. Take whatever measurement you want, and Trudeau's wrong. But those low information voters don't know this because the media party will not question Trudeau. They won't tell folks this, and if he wins, then we're all in trouble. Prime Minister Harper laid it out pretty well earlier today.
So look, as I say, we develop policies to try and benefit the broad spectrum of hardworking Canadian families. What I know is when politicians on the Liberal or NDP side start talking about the middle class versus others, what they're talking about is a bunch of tax increases that will inevitably hit hardworking Canadian families. If you raise taxes on employers, if you institute a carbon tax, if you take away the universal child care benefit that the Liberal Party has said it will do, if you do those things, you hurt hardworking Canadian families, and that's not our policy.
Higher taxes to fund left-wing spending based on faulty ideas that aren't backed up by facts. That's your future. If you don't wake up your family, your friends, your neighbors, they have to realize that those ads are right, and Trudeau proves it whenever he speaks. He really is in over his head. And that's the byline.